Morning, everybody. A bit of an echo here. I'm not quite sure where the echo is coming from, but I'll keep battering on just in case. We have taken over the recruiting gym this morning as JobAdder with the Tech Stack week. So I have a jam-packed week with you. So today, my special guest is Drew Burkin from JobAdder. Morning, Drew. And Drew's going to have to take a look at the topic of, is your existing ATS reducing your capacity to grow? And then over the week, we've got Judy Loan from Sourcewell, we've got Joe Pivot from One Up Sales, we've got John Russell at Staffing Up, all join us to give us some top tips around just having a look at your tech stack and see how things are going. So
the first thing we should talk about when you're picking a new ATS system, and whether it's slowing you down or not, is looking for the signs that it is. So you have to diagnose the problem first. That can be as simple as like doing a quick SWOT analysis, but there are some basic things that you should look for, and people like lists of 5, so we'll do 5 things. The first thing is if you're relying too much on spreadsheets. Now, you might have an ATS system and still be leaning on spreadsheets, and that's obviously a big red flag. So if you're leaning too hard on spreadsheets, it's probably time to change. The big thing is admin. How long are you as an individual or your consultant spending on manual admin that you look at and think that could be a time-saving exercise right there? That would be a big thing that ATS providers talk to you about. How can we save you time? So identifying where those time-saving opportunities are is always a really good thing in understanding whether it's time to move into or move away from an ATS. One thing I wasn't sure whether to include or not, but I will, especially for sort of larger agencies getting, 5 upwards. We get lots of questions at JobAdder about this, and it's reports. If you've got no way of reporting on the activity that you're doing, by activity, that's lots of things as in job ad response and things like that, all the way down to time on the phone, then an ATS system is going to help. Okay, so having good access to reports and understanding what you do, really, really important. Time to hire. Okay, so is it taking you a long time to fill the positions that you have? If it's taking too long, and too long is different in different industries, so I wouldn't care to say what too long would be. But if you feel that your recruitment process is lasting too long, then you need to shorten it. Good ATS will help you do that. Lastly, when you're moving on, if you have an existing ATS, there are 3 main things that people move away from that ATS for. If that system is clunky, okay, it's like, so if you're clicking on something, you get a spinning wheel of death all the time, or it's taking 5 minutes to load a list, it's probably time to move on. If it's slow, which is similar, and the big thing is if you're getting low engagement, so that's the leading reason that people move away from ATS. So if your staff aren't using the product that you've paid for, it will probably be up there in your top 3 investments in terms of tech stack. So it's really important that it's engaged with. So yeah, if the staff aren't using it or you're not using it, it's time to move on. So those are the 5 things that I think it's most important when you're diagnosing whether or not it's time to invest in a new ATS CRM.
Is that the key? Is that the key sort of pain points you get when you talk to people around JobAdder, Drew, in particular? It's like, what kind of drives them to have that initial conversation?
Massively. So anybody who works in the ATS CRM space knows that it's pain moving away from anything. So it's difficult because you're ingrained in that system, right? However, if that system's not being used at all, what's the point in having it? And a CRM is only as good as the data you put into it. Something like when you're searching through that data has to be kept clean, right? That's almost the whole point of it. It's that centralized location for all of that data. So if you can't keep clean data and no one's using it, you got 5 people working on spreadsheets, 5 people away from the system, and 5 people in it. It's just going to create carnage within the business. You need to centralize that and make sure people are using it.
You're talking about data.
It's important to know why though. So why people stop using a system. The average CRM ATS system, we have a figure in the business is called time to value. Okay, time to value is the time it takes you to buy a system, like from buying the system and starting the system to actually getting return of investment on that system. And there are lots of systems that it takes a long time. It's one of the things we really like about Job. Obviously, I'm biased, right? But one of the things I really love about JobAdder as an ex-recruiter is I'd never use the system, and I set up a demo account that I use every day when we sell the product in a day. And I'm not, obviously, maybe not the best thing to say, but I'm not technically awesome. Okay, but yeah, I think if I can set up the system, it's really important to be able to do so. But yeah,
you mentioned You mentioned data, Drew. One of the biggest pain points that I hear, and it's not even just in the recruitment industry. Obviously, I work in marketing, so if someone said to me, "Sooz, we're going to change our marketing platform," I instantly my fear levels go to like a zillion, because I'm like, oh my god, how are we getting the data across? So how what other things should people consider around moving system, things like their data migration? What how would you help guide people through that?
That, Sooz, is a great question, and it's one I get on every single call when we're talking about data. Data is one of the most valuable things a recruitment agency can produce. It's where you find your candidates. 80% of candidates are sourced from a database at the moment in the last 3 months. So if you can't access your database, that sucks, firstly. But if you want to move that database, you obviously want to make sure it's done well. Things to look for are if you're having these conversations, how you move the data is really important, where the process is handled, whether you have an account manager, are all questions I'd be asking, because you don't want to get it wrong. If somebody says we just dump the data into the system, we put it in and it will be fine, that should ring alarm bells. If somebody can't walk you through the process of what happens when you're moving your data, that should ring alarm bells. If it's being handled outside of the company as well, so if it's being outsourced, then I would worry about that as well. And
yeah, because that hits us with the GDPR, doesn't it, and our data processing. And talking about the GDPR in the UK in particular, it's probably a good time to do some housekeeping on your database as well, isn't it? Just around, how long should you keep data for?
100%. We get lots of questions about that as well. It's like, can you do this for us? And the simple answer is no. Like, data, like, you need to keep clean data. But if you need to, it's a really good way of putting things together and packaging things up. If you need to clean your data up and you're not happy with your database, and if you need to make sure that you're GDPR compliant and all of those things, and your system's not working, that's a really good sign that you probably need to jump across ATS, move all of your data, clear it up as you go, and start fresh. Is what I need to start fresh. You don't need to start fresh. You need to clean up what you have and make sure that you can use it properly, because that's the whole point of all of this software. So you're pulling as much value as you can out of the information that you bring into the business. So yeah, you need to be able to do that.
So that kind of brings me on nicely to my next question for you. When if we think what our topic today is around, is your existing ATS slowing down or stopping you growing? If you're wasting time trying to find candidates, you can't find candidates. What other things? Basically it's releasing time, isn't it, to let you to spend time doing, because as we move forward, business development is going to be critical for us all next year. Finding candidates fast is a critical thing. Is there any other pros or cons you would suggest to someone when they're looking at a new system?
Yeah, 100%. The industry, I don't want to talk too widely about the industry. I want to focus on this, but as we move into BD, there are two. BD is a different skill set, right? So we spend lots of time resourcing it. There are people in the industry BD really well, people in the industry who resource really well. Those roles are splitting. They're becoming more granular again. It's like, right, I'm going to resource, I'm going to BD. You need a system that complements both of those skill sets, and you need somewhere, because those are two separate halves of the same job. You need to be able to keeping track of those things is going to be really, really important, because obviously when we're finding new business, we want to make sure we handle it well, and we handle that with a good relationship internally, but also the software needs to complement that. So having a software that makes it really easy to transition from one to the other and share hot lists, share candidates, share candidates applying through jobs, centralizing applications, really important as well. So all of those things are really good things to look for.
It's like getting our 180 recruiters working together, isn't it? So something that I've learned in the industry, because I have been in the industry for a wee while as well. I was never a recruiter, Drew, but I did work for a recruitment company, a recruitment agency and recruitment software. So I know only too well that someone potentially that you place is also a BD target as well. So being able to have that in a central system that you can access easy, it must be is critical.
100%. That's the nail on the head, Sooz. All the information you need right now should be in your system and should be accessible. If you're thinking how do I find this stuff because I can't find it in my ATS, that's that straight away. You need to be thinking about what's going on with your ATS. And I don't this isn't me pointing fingers at every single CRM provider, like, because that would very much be what I think of myself. It's for like, there are two halves of that. Is your ATS right? And are you putting data in the system right to make sure you can access easily? And those are two different questions. And we can help you answer both really when we go through this. If we ever speak to clients existing or new, those are the two things we try and solve. Like, can you access this information? Like, will you access this information? Is the second half of that. So yeah, it's definitely dual responsibility. But in terms of that as well, Sooz, like, if you split it down into two halves, you look at candidate journey and client journey. If you have a software that makes it easy to do both of those things and you can pay some value forward to your clients, that's really, really good as well. So if effectively what you don't want a glorified spreadsheet, you want something that's going to help you pull levers within your business and make moves, and your CRM ATS should do that.
100%. I think Hugo has added a link to an actual ebook that we've got, which sort of gives you some guidance around. Just have to look, see if Hugo shared it. Yes, he has. And he's pushing as well a recruiting gym as well. We've got another recruiting gym starting with Angela next Tuesday. We're doing some sourcing. Sorry, I've got distracted by the chat now. I'm like, kind of, hi Stephen, how are you this morning? Quite a few people saying good morning to us. I've got distracted in conversation. So we're 12 and a half minutes in. What else can we talk about with regards to, is your existing ATS reducing your capacity to grow? It's really just admin and paperwork and drowning in larger process.
It's also onboarding. So when you onboard a new recruiter, you have to think how long it's going to take. The industry's gone through a massive push. Salaries have gone up. If you bring somebody on a new salary, how long is it going to take them to get up to speed? And if you're, all of this software is to enable, like, Rec Tech should be to revolutionize or enhance your process. And if you think about every single process you go through, whether that's with a new employee yourselves, like a new recruiter, or whether it be with a client, whether it be with a candidate, whatever it might be, if the software that you're using isn't enriching that process, isn't making it easier, then you're reducing the capacity of your consultants. And there's an equation somewhere, I'm sure, of you do need to reduce the capacity of that consultant somehow to make sure they're keeping track of everything that you're doing, so you don't lose that information in a recruiter's head. But that equation should always rely on increasing that person's capacity by taking away the boring manual admin tasks they don't need to do, so they can spend as much time in their chair on the phone recruiting as possible. So yeah, like that's the main reason that this whole industry exists, right? To make their job easier. If you take a good hard look at your software and go, it's actually quite hard, it's making it difficult, which is a surprising amount of recruitment companies, I think, would find that if they took a good look at their Rec Tech, it's not actually doing the job it needs to. We need to streamline it. That's the time that you should start having conversations with providers. Maybe it's not ATS, maybe it's something else. But yeah, and if you're on the call and you're not sure what that time is, there's loads of information on our website. But Hugo's also popped something in the chat. I think my LinkedIn link's here somewhere. If you want to fire off a question, please do. It's important stuff. Anybody who's used CRM ATS knows how important it is and how much people view it as a necessary evil sometimes. It really doesn't have to be if you get your tech stack right. So yeah, I'm
not gonna ask you who you used when you were a recruiter, Drew. I'm not gonna ask you what system you use, because that's not what we're here for. What I will ask you is, what was the biggest frustration that wasted your time in the ATS that you previously used in your role? But don't say who it was.
Oh, of course not. I used a few. It depends. I might highlight how bad of a recruiter I was here. I don't know. No, I did okay, but I used to spend a lot of time sourcing candidates. So I was BD focused, but I was 360, so I'd source candidates because it was necessary to fill the jobs, and I would spend a lot of time on external softwares messaging people, bringing them into the system just to find that they were sitting in the database, but I couldn't access that. So that to me was my biggest waste of time. It's like, I've got a short list now of 5 people who I want to send to my client, and I could have found them all in 15 minutes instead of 2 days. Whether or not that was because of my searching capability, or whether the system wouldn't do the heavy lifting for me or help me with it, is a question that only I can answer. I know which way it would go.
I think that's a good note. I think that's a good note to wrap the day up, Drew, so we don't start drilling you about your recruitment sourcing strategies and things like that. So we're 16 minutes in. Huge thank you, Drew, for coming along today. Tomorrow we'll be joined by Doogie Loan from Sourcewell, and we'll be looking at recruitment in engagement platforms and why they're the next must-have in your tech stack. So I noticed it was recruitment engagement because it's obviously client and candidate engagement that we want to look at. So thank you everyone for joining us this morning, and we'll be back tomorrow. Bye.